everybody.
Start.
Okay. Welcome to the Executive Board this evening. First item on the agenda is the evacuation procedure, which I haven't got in front of me, but we have no visitors, so I'm sure we are all aware if we hear the alarm exit via the safest exit, congregate in the car park at point G, is it? And don't move until instructed to do so.
You just follow the leader.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, thank you. The next item is apologies for absence. We did have and now we haven't.
We also have apology for absence from Councillor.
Sorry, Councillor Gosling is substituted by Councillor Dervick. Well, okay. Next item is disclosable pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests. Item number 4, public participation.
They're not here.
Pardon?
They're not here.
Item number 5 is the minutes of the Executive Board held on the 20th of July.
Moved. Second.
In favour? Thank you. Okay. Item number 6 is the A5 consultation by National Highways. Recall that we were successful in securing £80 million funding from the government back in March 2020, and this, which was obviously secured to allow us to deliver our local plan, and it was only one of 3 schemes in the whole of the country. So the ongoing saga continues of the delivery and the options. The consultation that was due to finish on the 16th is then extended to the 27th of October, following the national period of national mourning, and then the options are in the report. So I'm asking for the recommendation to be approved. Any comments tonight? Councillor Chambers.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm a bit surprised this hasn't been through the process of LDF consideration so that we've had a chance to help formulate the views. But having said that, I have been along to 2 consultation sessions, one which was a much more in-depth session between National Highways and Parish Council, but there was also the public session which was held in Dordon Village Hall, and I think had about 100 people going through that in that particular session. And you know, to complement National Highways, they have put a huge amount of staff effort into these consultative events, and they certainly spent 2 hours with the Parish Council going over the options in some detail, and also gave us some context for how this sits within the overall national thinking about a pipeline between Hinckley and Tamworth, and the drivers around A5 as a road versus what is the driver behind this, which is, you know, the funding driver, which was to accommodate the growth of local traffic around the housing developments in Dordon and Polesworth and the rest of the A5. So that having been said, and it's a very polished sort of document with a questionnaire and lots of online and webinars and so on. That having been said, I think and I don't know why it's happened, but it feels as though it's been done in isolation from a real dialogue with us as a planning authority and as a forward planning authority, and indeed our highways authority and the county council, because what is clear is that the options that we've got in front of us don't really take account of what was said in the local plan. I think Dorothy Barrett makes this point in her comment, which I assume is the basis of a draft response, which was that the local plan is dependent on improvements to the A5, not just between that small stretch between Dordon and Grendon, but actually between Grendon and Atherstone. And all the connections, including the relief roads and so on, need to be part of the thinking about the option appraisal that we have in front of us. So, and that's certainly what the communities are coming back, and that's what the parish council said. You know, you're going to all you're going to do is move the bottleneck from 100 yards down the road from Dordon roundabout to Grendon roundabout, and some of the real connectivity issues about elderly and disabled people not being able to get across the A5 just haven't been described in any detail. The entry points for the relief road aren't mapped out in terms of the options. And it's not clear in terms of the option appraisal summary table that is in there, which clearly points to better vehicle movement, less delays along Long Street, which is what local people absolutely want solving. There's just a kind of set of pluses, a bit like a witch report, around which there's no evidence base at all. And when you actually say, so what's behind that assumption that option A is going to lead to less vehicles and less delays up and down Long Street, it feels like somebody's just done a desktop exercise and they haven't actually done any traffic modelling studies as yet, etc., etc. So it's unfortunate, because I think there's been a huge amount of effort has gone into this, but I think what's going to come back from certainly from the local communities and the parish council is what a huge waste of money this is, 50 odd million, or is it 75 million now with that, without actually solving necessarily the problem of the A5 congestion as a road, but also doesn't acknowledge in the options the need to deal with the growth in traffic from the housing developments that are going to happen along the A5, of which I think 70% of all the housing developments that are planned in our plan actually feed into the A5 arterial road. So I think, I think there's going to be a lot of negative comments. I think clearly Dorothy has, with the team there, has looked at the options that are in front of us and has made her own critique of the process and the lack of acknowledgement of what this scheme was intended to do in the options that are in front of us. But having said that, if you have to choose between the three of them, I think she's rightly concluded, as indeed the discussion with the parish council did emerge at that time, that option B, which apparently is the more expensive one because there's more roundabouts in it, could more separate the local traffic from the A5 HGV traffic if it was to go ahead. But the issues of connectivity in terms of cycle paths and footways across, yet another bridge is being planned, the disruption to the water table, the wildlife and the biodiversity, the need to actually elevate this road so that it's very, very visible for the whole of the village, in terms of the impact on the landscape. I think it's, I suppose it's kind of inevitable when you actually get down to some of the detail that when the reality is in front of you, it begins to look a bit less appealing or indeed beneficial to what the kind of original statement was, and the requirement by the inspector to make some improvements to the A5. And so, yeah, that's the comments that we're getting back. I do think it would have helped if we had an opportunity in the LDF to explore that. I thought it was going to come on Monday, so I was going to suggest that in terms of the handling of this by the chief exec on our behalf, that certainly the LDF, members of the LDF should be given an opportunity to feed in their comments and also try and summarise some of the consultation responses that they've been picking up as local councillors as well.
Okay.
Can I just Chair, with your permission, to just deal with the LDF point. We would have ideally liked it gone to the LDF, but with the original timetable, it didn't quite fit because the September meeting the papers went out on the Friday before we were allowed to publish and that your next meeting finished a day after the scheduled ending of Now Have We Known that they were going to be extended. Then we may well have put it on the agenda for Monday. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. The only thing I'd like to add to Councillor Chambers' comments is that, you know, so I'm no road engineer. I can't see that this is going to solve the problems we've got. But I do see it being an efficient way of channeling the vehicles into the villages as a rat run. I mean, we already suffer with the amount of traffic that flows through our village, and I just think this island's going to make it a lot more efficient for that traffic to flow that way rather than at the junction 10. And that's one of my main concerns. I don't know about the Badgley, but certainly and why it's being built, but after it's built, I can see that flow coming through to us. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I support everything that's been said already. Just 3 additional considerations that perhaps we need to make more of. We know, Chair, that the A5 is the most dangerous road anywhere in Warwickshire, and while one of the ambitions of National Highways is to make it safer, none of this information that's come out for consultation in any way explains how it will make the A5 safer. And we know that we have, over the last 18 months, had a fatality on the A5 at this location. The second point concerns Dorothy's statements about option C about Lower House Farm and the access. It's a bit more than an inconvenience. With option C, perhaps we need to really stress that there will be a significant cost to the borough, because every wagon coming out of Lower House Farm and Gypsy Lane will have to go all the way down to junction 10 to turn around and come back if they want to go in the direction of Alston. So in terms of staff costs, vehicle mileage, fuel, and just the whole process, it doesn't work. And I think that I'm still really confused with the scheme as the third point about how this fits into H4 and the prospect of those 2,000 new homes. I mean, one would expect that those residents many of whom will be commuting. So how this scheme accommodates significant growth like that isn't clear at all.
Councillor Hayfield.
I think there's been some very good points. Jackie's made a very thorough analysis of it and everything. And I'd love to think that if we be choosing the right option for the most expensive option, but for the right reasons, that National Highways will do anything other than choose the cheapest.
Fair enough. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, I having read this a few times, I'm still confused, to be honest, as to which is the way to go. My instinctive reaction is, if I have to choose between A, B, and C, then I'd probably go for D. My concern, having read this, and I don't pretend that I've seen all of the papers, but it's not putting into a more strategic context. All of these options produce more roundabouts on the A5. Just about the one thing the A5 doesn't need is more roundabouts. And if you start from the motorway junction and go down to past Alston, in my time here, we've had more and more and more roundabouts. And when we look at the development proposals that we have for, I'm not saying for a minute whether they're going to get planning consent or they're not, but we know there's at least another additional roundabout being suggested at the top end. And there's significant work and maybe another roundabout being suggested by Myra. It's how many roundabouts can one bit of road take before it just becomes absolutely bottlenecked by people stopping at each roundabout. The one thing roundabouts do, they make it easier to move along in some cases. They absolutely do slow down the traffic, and in that context, with all stopping and starting, increase pollution as well. All of these, I'm sure, have got merits and dismerits. I can't work out how they fit into the growth plans associated with the development plan. But I certainly don't see in this necessarily, and I'm trying to say I just can't see it. What is the strategic vision for the A5 as a national highway. It doesn't seem to have it here. What we're doing is putting more roundabouts in, and on necessity, slowing down the traffic. Yeah, what is this road intended to be ultimately? And the more roundabouts we have, two new roundabouts in one of them, for that stretch of, what is it, a mile or so to go in all the other roundabouts? This road will simply cease to function.
I think it's quite interesting that, you know, obviously there's been the A5 partnership has been campaigning for many years to upgrade the A5, not just this part of the A5, but from the M42 to the 69, the M69, and moreover, there is a pretty strong case to continue not just to the M69, but to the M1 down in, you know, well, rugby sort of Northamptonshire, basically. And it's almost by doing this and being granted the 80 million that we have, that sort of seems to strengthened that case now for the comprehensive improvement from the 42 to the 69 and hopefully beyond. You know, we could probably say I'm slightly selfish because I travel that stretch every single day, and it's a flipping and it is a nightmare. So yeah, what is in front of us? None of the schemes are ideal, but one can only hope and keep our fingers crossed that actually it is going to sort of focus National Highways' mind on that complete overhaul, which then would be because, you know, we all recall there have been various sort of schemes mooted about dualling the A5 from the M42 to the M69, and that is the only solution really. We would probably still need a couple of roundabouts, Councillor Simpson, but yeah, putting roundabouts in, yeah, just to, well, infinitum is not the solution. And one must also remember that one of the key points that's been made in the consultation is around air quality, or air pollution, should I say, from cars standing, and it's a significant impact. So if we're, you know, so if National Highways are going to address the issues that they're being told they need to address by the government over air pollution and all the rest, then just putting roundabouts on a very busy road is not going to solve that. So it's chicken and the egg, hopefully. Councillor Bell and then Councillor Humphreys and Councillor Dervis and Councillor Mawson. Did you do anything as well? Everybody wants to talk. Okay, Councillor Bell.
I just wondered if they considered something similar to they've done through Tamworth. I mean, there are obviously roundabouts at major junctions like the A38, but the rest have got slip roads, and the roundabouts are either under or over the road. And okay, it's expensive, but if you're going to dual the road, you need it to flow, and that bit of the A5 through Tamworth is brilliant, and you know that's what we need. And why isn't that even considered? Is the topology wrong, or is it just too expensive? I honestly don't know the answer. Does anybody know?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Just a good point, Councillor Bell, yeah. Councillor Humphreys.
Chair, when we go back to the LDF and the inspector, when we, you know, all the clarifications that went in October 2018, and it's taken 2.5 years before it gets back to us. And he said, without any improvements on the A5, our plan didn't work. This doesn't really improve the A5. This is just meddling. The other thing we haven't taken into account here, if Hodgetts get what they're going to get, there's going to be a lorry park another 150 yards up from not Handel, Birch Coppice, with another set of traffic lights as well. You know, how many more disruptions? And then if you come further back down, and I know it's with the work that might take place at Myra, another 2 roundabouts on that bit of A5 with the new entrance into Myra and solving the problem of coming off the 40, off of the trip A54. So we're not doing what The best thing that happened to Tamworth, it went straight across new countryside and it became a road and you go all the way to Brownhill with only one roundabout in the way. And this is not an improvement. This is just fiddling, and I don't like any of them. And it still doesn't. I don't know what it does, and I'm surprised that Councillor Jackie didn't turn around and say anything. What's going to happen to Long Street? Because Long Street's still going to be a bottleneck forever unless we can get traffic coming one way on it, and this does nothing. So I don't know what to say, whether I can support it or hate it, but I'll probably hate it. Thank you.
Okay. Cool. We can't do what they did through Staffordshire and just go through because HS2 is doing that. Councillor Dervix.
Thank you. And basically, I was going to bring up the same point as Councillor Bell. While I was on the A5 group, I was on it for nearly 8 years. We looked at all sorts of possibilities and made suggestions, and that was one of them, to look at ways that we could almost have an expressway through, because that is what it needs. As far as I can see, this does nothing to reduce the pollution, because it will stop the traffic regularly on its way through villages, through the A5. It is very difficult to see what the improvements are really going to achieve on this.
2,100.
One of the problems that we were repeatedly told was that no land can be protected or roads until there is a viable scheme with funding included in it. And unfortunately, that means that we're running out of time. We've already run out of time for a lot of the possible projects and routes that were put forward during those 8 years that I was there, because of housing and other developments along the routes. We can't protect it. We could very easily find ourselves in a situation where there are no options left open. I think that is inexcusable, really. It's something that should have been planned for by successive governments, not laying it at the present one. They haven't been there long enough. But it is. I wasn't going to say that. It's becoming too late to solve these problems by any methods that are not expensive, and the central government has got to bite the bullet and put the money into it, and we've got to show them that we're serious in our criticisms of these and why we don't think that they will work.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mawson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very similar to what people have said. Again, I was going to bring up about Long Street, but Dave's still not done dirt about it. Long Street doesn't relieve it much at all, any of these ones don't. And personally, I think it's just going to move the traffic from where it queues at Dordon like nobody's business to Grendon, through Grendon, because wherever one it works, if the first one, if they have traffic lights there, they ain't going to stop it at all, because you're still going to have the pollution and tackle there, but the traffic lights waiting. And likewise, but the other island they want to put in there, it'll come round that island straight into Grendon and it'll be blocked up again. I've come today, this afternoon when I came down there, from Grendon, right through Grendon, from Grendon Island, nearly to the top of the other one, was total traffic all the way through. That traffic it's still going to come along that road regardless of what happens to do it. So personally, this is just a couple of sticking plasters to cover up. The real need for it is, like the chairman says, is a bypass from the M42 to the M69, and we need to start looking at it now to do it. Because if the A5 is a major trunk road and all the development that's going on there, it can only get worse. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I've got Councillor Simpson and Councillor Chambers.
I'll be really quick, Chairman. I should have said in the past, what I was trying to say was the distance between the roundabouts, the existing spawn lane one, the new one, or the new two that are proposed. I don't know if the Chief Executive can tell us what the studies have been done, but how long will it take for those bits of road to clear? Because I suspect, as everyone has said, traffic will simply block up between Spawn Lane and the new roundabout, and on option B, it'll probably block up to the following roundabout. So we will have gridlock. There's the additional time it takes people to get around the new roundabouts. I'd be interested to see what the modelling has done in terms of how quickly will that be, because these are pretty short distances between roundabouts. Now, okay, that may be useful as a traffic calming measure, but not on the A5.
Well, I was just going to ask, Chairman, whether, given that the LDF is meeting on Monday and given that there is an extension of the deadline for responding, whether we could add this to the agenda to try and get a bit more, working through with the members of the LDF. I think it's such an important issue. My worry is, having heard them describe the national context and the politics of what they are dealing with as national highways, is that this might be our only chance, if you like, to get any A5 improvements in the foreseeable future. And had it not been for that housing related money that's coming from a different bit of the government, from that which is going to fund the pipeline against, it's going to compete against 37 other competitive applications, if you like, that they are putting in for roads. That if we're too negative, we might just throw out the baby and we do need to actually make a sensible comment about if you have to choose of these and you can't afford the kind of more strategic option that Councillor Bell's referring to, then we do need a kind of considered view. And I think we need to guide our Chief Executive as to what that response should be without totally kind of being negative about it.
Okay. Councillor Mawson, did you want to come?
Just to pick up, I forgot to say that the biggest problem with it is the single carriageway through Grendon. And until that's done, we're going to have no but problems.
Okay.
Very briefly, Chairman. So you're right in terms of lost opportunities around creating something that looks a bit like the Tamworth scheme. Dorothy, if she went on holiday, would tell you that at the turn of the century or just before, she went to National Highways or whatever they were called then and said, bring it round the back of where now phase 2 of Birch Coppice is. Don't see it again until you see the side of Aston. Clearly, that's an opportunity that, as Councillor Derrick says, successive governments have not had, and it's the closeness of the development now. National Highways are very keen in the discussions we've had to make sure this fits in with an overall strategy from 42 to 69. As they've said, they're not coming back. They've said there's more chance of the Romans coming back to do work on this than them coming back again. So they are at least in that thinking, even if it doesn't show it through here. We will get more detail after this. This is purposefully just lined on a map and an option. So there will be more detail about how it across the road and how roundabouts clear and all that sort of thing to come. So we can hold those conversations. Two other quick points then is if the LDF chairman wishes to receive an urgent item for the meeting on Monday, that's entirely up to him. I'm not entirely sure whether all the urgency provisions are required, but it's entirely a matter for you as to whether you want to add it to that agenda as an urgent item. I think you've had a steer from this group.
Mr. Chair, you can put it onto the LDF and give the local members another opportunity to express their views. That'd be great.
Yeah. And finally, I've written down everything that appears to be consensual rather than me going through it now. John, if I write a note in effect to Dorothy, but I copy you all in, you can then check. That's going to work as it were as to whether I've made the right comments. And Dorothy will be at the meeting on Monday. And she can that's a way forward, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So with the sorry, yeah.
If I could just ask, through you, Chair, can I ask the Chief Executive? There are various projects going through highways at county that have already been, because of inflation, and now could be at risk, and it could slow them down or even stop them or change their priority. The county said they would pick up any overspend on this particular development on top of the 79 million. Do you know if that would bring any risk? I mean, what's the over 10%? Would the council have the county totally committed to it, or if there was another 7 million involved, would that actually kill it off from county view? Could you find out?
Well, last time I spoke to the county and raised that very issue, I was assured by the leader and I can't remember his title, Rob Powell, he's the Director of Resources. Both of them gave me assurances that the A5 was the most important thing in Warwickshire, and nothing would stand in its way. That's they were the, and I think I think the chief exec was with me at that meeting when I asked the question.
I was there, and that's what was said.
Yes.
A meeting we had last night, it was on the slides as a
Absolutely.
priority again.
It is. It is a priority.
I appreciate that.
So the county are yeah, that's what they said, and it was a
So we
dare I
could,
say, a
we could
politician
get
and
number one priority
an
and something else falls off the.
well, that was what we were told at that meeting, that it is the number one priority within the county.
All right, good. Thank you for that.
yeah.
I feel totally reassured.
Good. Well, it was a politician and an officer that said the same thing, which is really, it was quite reassuring.
Move on while you're winning.
Okay, so the recommendation, can we take the recommendation? I'll move the recommendation with the added caveats that we're going to look at it at the LDF, the permission, current permission being granted by the chairman. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hayfield. All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay. Item number 7 is the capital accounts 2021-22. And this summarises the capital spending in 2021-22 and shows how it's been funded.
I'll move the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, Chair. I freely admit I am not conversant in accountancy speak. And I just do not understand. Sorry, someone perhaps could explain to me this bit about capital creditors. So capital creditors 21-22 amounts relating to 21-22 which are not paid for a year, but won't be financed until 22-23. I sort of understand that. So it's money we should have spent, but we didn't. But what I don't get is, does that then fit into capital receipts, grants, contributions, revenue, borrowing, or 106 funding? And how does that, something in English would be helpful.
It makes perfect sense to me, Councillor Simpson.
Just like a shot you,
Yeah, you are right. Creditors are amounts of money that you have incurred but not spent. Yes. Now, as to where they are in, whether they're capital grants, contribute, blah blah. Sue will tell us where they are in that. But that's what creditors are. Yeah.
Yes, Jack, they're not in there at the moment. They will form part of next year's receipts regularly. What I'm saying is at this point, because we haven't actually paid the cash out, I don't need to fund them for the 21-22, they will form part of 22-23.
So I take it that's accountancy, but you'll have to wait and see.
Suck it and see.
Sure, if I may, in some cases, these are where we've done the work and we've been waiting for the bill to come in. And yes, basically, I haven't taken the decision yet as to where to fund them from. You're right, it's a wait and see. You'll find out next year.
Thanks, Chair. Move the recommendation.
Councillor Phillips.
Just say, Chair, we'll be abstaining on the budgetary matters because of maybe to put in the budget together or opposition budget.
That's fair enough, but this is what we've already spent.
So we're here for the garden now.
Or happens, just the case may be.
Fair point.
He's just explained budget. Doesn't speak, so I think we ought to just be on the safe side. Just in case we don't understand it at all.
Okay, thank you. So it's been, the recommendation has been moved and seconded. All those in favour? And again, or abstaining. So that is carried. Thank you. Item number 8 is the capital programme. So it gives the greater detail of the capital works we undertook in 2021-22. And with the, some of the, obviously the schemes have not progressed as expected in the timescales, etc. So there is a little bit carried forward into this current year. Any comments, questions? I'll move that to the chair.
Just one general question, Chairman, and I honestly don't know the answer. Does this work within the capital programme relate to the 2 new sets of houses that have been built on Colsall Road and I think it's still Long Street? And I know there are issues relating to their finalisation, but do we have an estimate of when they'll be available to be let and used?
Yes, they are in this programme, and no, we don't at the moment have a timescale for when they will be completed.
Thank you.
Councillor Riley.
Yeah, Chairman, I don't want to miss an opportunity to congratulate the officers of the council on some great work, but 3.5 refers to works at Waterford Car Park. And Keith Evans and Richard Dobbs' support for those works has been absolutely fantastic. So I'm very grateful to them. I also think under 3.9 we should be recognising the works at Colwyn Park and Boot Hill for the new football pitch, and also the works based on the leisure unit at Polesworth, which again has been driven forward by our officers and the great pieces of work.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Derby.
Thank you. It's going back really to the new builds in Alliston that Councillor Simpson mentioned. Could I urge that we try to resolve that as soon as possible, because I have had representations from members of the public who have been left a little bit in limbo, thinking that they're going to move back into those and haven't been able to for some time, and it's causing quite a lot of anxiety with those families.
I can give you that assurance. Councillor Dervick's self and Angela are well, as equally frustrated by the situation, but we are well, when I say we, it's the Royal we. Obviously Angela's doing the work, but Angela's doing everything she can to bring that matter to a speedy end. Absolutely.
I don't think that is the answer that I was expecting.
There we are.
But I have recently had people coming and trying to find out what is happening.
Yeah.
So if it is possible to give reassurance as soon as possible, because I know of at least one case where somebody was left for nearly 2 weeks just waiting for an acknowledgement of an email.
Right. Okay.
Didn't go direct to housing.
Councillor Chambers.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, in terms of the budget that there is for insulation, why there isn't a carry forward for payments in 22-23 in that budget line, because I'm getting questions from our council house tenants about what scope is there for getting their cavity walls filled and their insulation of their homes improved, and I understand there isn't a budget for it this year.
I'll have to hand that to Sue or Angela.
Well, Chair, if I could just say, the reason it hasn't been carried forward was because we didn't have enough left in the programme to carry forward. We've carried forward all of the programme that we could. So any shortfall we will have to pick up in the current year's allocation. I think we did report to Resources Board at the last meeting that there is a lot of pressure on the housing capital budgets at the moment. And Angela and I are certainly working at the moment to try and identify exactly what the shortfall might be, so we can try and put a plan in place to meet that shortfall.
No, thank you, Sue. The simple answer is, Councillor Chambers, you can only carry forward an amount if you haven't spent it.
We haven't spent it. We haven't spent 64.5k, 100k, 64,000k, but it's I mean, I think that, you know, if you were a resident, you'd say, well, why are you spending so much money on a recycling facility, on car parks, and on, you know, a scheme to replace the Addiston swimming pool? And how do you judge that against my priority, which is to get my house warmer? I'm just putting the kind of questions, you know, that may be asked if somebody was to look at how we've chosen those commitments and what we have agreed to carry forward and what we haven't.
Well, they're two different funds for a start. One's the housing capital account and the other one's the general capital account. The cases that you just highlighted. Yeah. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, John. Just a small question, but I'm pleased to see we spent just over 1.1 million on building the SMERF. As I remember, this scheme was fantastic in that we made money on the money we put in to build it, and then we made money when it was operational, and then we saved money on the stuff that we sent to it. So it's like we win or we win or we win. Given that interest rates are now substantially better than they were when we agreed, I guess we're making more money than we thought we were going to make on the money that we've lent to build money on something that's going to make us money. Is that right?
I would hope so.
Or was the interest rate fixed?
I don't remember saying we were fixing that interest rate, was it? Surely it would be variable.
Chair, the interest rate was fixed, unfortunately.
Okay.
Every silver lining has its place.
Can I go to that? I'd like to get onto that.
Yeah, so would I.
Okay. Well, I'll move the recommendation from the chair, seconded by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour? Close. And abstaining? Thank you. Item number 9 is the earmark reserves, 2022-23. So the movement in both revenue and capital earmark reserves in 2021-22 has been set out and brought together with the balances held at the end of the year. Councillor Mawson.
Through the report, looking at the potential risks that we've got, it's quite a few. And just wondering if it would be time now to set up a task and finish group to look at these risks and see if we can come to some conclusion or see if we can eliminate some.
I think that the risks are amply dealt and scrutinised by the Resources Board. I don't think we really need a task and finish group. Seeing as our chair of resources is here, are you happy with you are scrutinising those risks and challenging?
I mean, absolutely. So we go through what those issues are. Yeah, I am.
I'm not.
Okay. We'll have to agree to differ, Councillor Mawson.
Okay.
Is that a proposal?
Yes, I'm proposing.
Not to go through, but I mean, you've given a fairly clear answer. That's the outcome. But if Councillor Mawson's proposing that, we need a seconder.
I'll second it.
Might you then put it to vote?
Okay, so the proposal is that you want a Councillor Mawson is proposing that a task and finish group be set up to look at financial risks.
Risks, yes.
All those in favour of that proposal? And all those against? And that is locked. Okay.
Are you surprised?
Very.
So I'll move the original recommendation note, seconded by Councillor Simmons. All those in favour? Abstentions? That is carried, thank you. Item number 10 is the financial strategy 2022 to 2027. So the February forecast has been updated and an estimate for the 26-27 has been added. No further information about future external funding is available yet, but spending pressures such as the proposed pay award and energy price increases have been built into the revised forecast. This has unfortunately made council's financial position slightly worse, therefore increasing the level of savings that we need to find. Any comments or Councillor Simpson?
Thanks, Chairman. It's just one of the bullet points on the review of 22-23 in relation to planning income, where we talk about the mix of planning applications is skewed towards the smaller end. Planning board was generally concerned about outlook, if you like, for that particular budget and discussed it at greater length than we normally do in financial report. I'm happy enough with the comment, but can the director give us any guidance as to where she sees the planning income going? And is there an increased or reduced likelihood of the need for a supplementary budget towards the end of the year or not?
You answer that and I'll say.
Well, I'll attempt to answer it, Chair. I'm not sure I'll have all the detail that you've hoped for. But certainly this particular view was taken following a discussion with Jeff Brown. And we had the discussion, and before he got back to his office, he found out we were going to get an additional large application, which is why we took the view on 22-23. Clearly, it hasn't come in, to the best of my knowledge, yet. So we will continue to keep it under review. So it's difficult to say whether any additional budget provision will be needed or not before the end of the year at this stage, but we will continue to monitor it.
That was what was behind my question, Richard. At the time the board last considered it, we were taking a very pessimistic view. But literally, something like 30 seconds later, the excitement of planning led to an influx of cash, but it hasn't actually influxed yet.
Okay, interestingly, before I bring Councillor Hayfield and Councillor Simmons in, this was another subject that we spoke about last night at the county with all, well, no, not all, but most districts and boroughs and the county agreeing that we should make strong representation to the government to say that we should go for full cost recovery on planning applications rather than the somewhat meagre percentage at the moment, which will clearly help. And it should be seen as a positive by the government because the government's agenda of growth, one of the major contributors to growth is planning. So it would help their agenda as well if we could go for cost recovery, which would then not only generate new income, but it then would be hopefully enable for planning officers, but keeping planning officers, etc. That's the thing.
I agree with the thrust of that, but there are some applications that we currently don't charge for, can't charge for, such as list of order consent. We can charge for application, but not the associated list of order consent. And I do think there are some planning applications that should continue to be nil charge. But the general thrust of what you're saying, I clearly agree.
Yeah, it's generally after the big applications and Councillor Hayfield and then Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at section 4 in the budget projections, particularly the forecasts on 4.4, and just thinking, this must be an awful task to try and guess where inflation is going to be over the next year or two, and what that will do to your figures. And you come up with a nice line here that's quite reassuring. Have you done a sort of best case and worst case scenario on what might happen with inflation? It's pretty poor at the moment.
Chair, I've done some projections, and you'll see later in the report we have a best case and a worst case. I have to be honest, the worst case isn't really the worst case because I could make it a lot worse, but I'm trying my hard to keep my head above the water. So it's bad enough, but it could get particularly bad. Now, some of that does take into account the fact that we might lose income, for example, in a particular service, but also that costs might increase. But it is very difficult to try and estimate at the moment where inflation is going to take us.
Councillor Simmons.
That's fine, my question's been asked. Thank you.
I mean, I think, just to add, I mean, Sue has mentioned the new homes bonus scheme, which, there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment. They're saying that that's going to come to an end again. Strong representation being made to the government by the district council network on why that is a bad move. Again, it doesn't really fit into the growth agenda. Equally, the business rates grant that we get, they're tinkering around or not with that. And equally, my and others' argument is that if you start taking that from local authorities, if you reduce the new house bonus and the business, where is the incentive for local authorities to bring in that, well, to build the houses and equally to attract new business, which has that adverse effect. Nobody gets the growth that we want and need. So there's a lot of representation going on presently. So I'll move the recommendation from the chair, seconded by Councillor Hayfield. All those in favour? Nearly again, Councillor Moss. Abstention.
I'm on a different one, I'm reading, sorry.
And 4 abstentions? Okay, thank you. Item number 11 is the partnership framework and significance scorecard. As we're aware, we work with partners in a number of areas, but we don't have a formal process of assessing the benefits of these arrangements. So to strengthen the governance arrangement around partnerships, I propose to introduce a partnership framework with the use of a scorecard as part of that process. Any questions? I'll move that from the chair then, seconded by Councillor Simmons. All those in favour?
Right.
Okay, thank you. Item number 12 is the asylum seeker accommodation dispersal arrangements. Now, there has been an update from only a few hours ago. So I'm going to hand to Angela.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's been an update from the West Midlands Partnership today, really. So as the report says, full dispersal started from April. The migration partnerships across the country were asked to consider how they could cooperate and support full dispersal for asylum seeking. And the West Midlands Partnership put forward a proposal based on population, which is what is stated in the report, in the tables or in the report. The Home Office and their delivery agent, Circle, have considered those proposals, and Circle have put forward some revised figures, which are based on what they believe the market, the housing market, can deliver in each of the areas in the West Midlands. So that means that their proposals mean that some of the figures are revised up and some of the figures are revised down. But because that has just been presented to the partnership today, and there's going to be conversations and meetings about that in the next week, we're not in a position to share those figures. But effectively, it means the partnership's made its proposals based on population. Circle have had a look at those and said that they want to propose figures based on what the market can deliver. And ultimately, at the end of this month, the Home Office will decide where to go with those and make a decision about how dispersal will be managed across the West Midlands, but also the rest of the country.
Thank you. Comments?
So, and as a result of that, Chair, if I may, it might be prudent then to suggest a slightly amended recommendation, which is that the council is minded, or this board is minded to support the proposal in the report, but delegated powers be given to me in consultation with you and the lead auditor. To respond to any further developments is probably an elastic enough term, if that helps.
I'll move that amended recommendation, Chairman.
Second it.
Okay, thank you. So it's been moved in second. You want to speak or you wait to?
No, I'm waiting. I'm not intending.
Excuse me, so it has been moved in second. All those in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. Thank you. Item number 13 is the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman Annual Review 2021-22. So this is the annual report from the Ombudsman to complaints that have been received and compliments received. So you'll note there are only 4 complaints we received, which resulted in an investigation. Any questions, comments? There are none.
I echo your comments, Chairman. It is good news. When you consider the complexity of some of the work that's been done by the borough, and you look at the complaints table on page 118, actually it is a very low number of complaints that are coming. Indeed, there are some areas of service where there have been no complaints at all. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm essentially the same sort of thing, but also looking at the table at 5.9 in the report. Given the breadth of the council services and the number of members of the public that we interact with, together with the pressures that our services have had as a result of lockdown, I think it's a testament to how well the council has functioned, and really a source of, for me to say thank you to our officers and employees, that the level of complaint is an indicator that the level of performance and service has been particularly high during lockdown. So I would have honestly, along with a lot of other businesses, probably have expected an increase in the number of complaints throughout the lockdown period because of the difficulty of accessing service and everything else. It doesn't seem to have had a material impact. So well done, everyone, I think.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo those thoughts. Every complaint that we get is obviously something we need to take seriously, but we should be very proud of the fact that it is a low number and that they are dealt with in a timely and proper manner, as evidenced by this report. So thank you to all the staff that are involved in that process.
I think it's nice to see, as people have said, the low number of complaints, but it's as nice, or even nicer, to see that we've actually had 52 compliments as well, which is, people very often complain, but don't very often compliment or say thank you, do they? And it's a pretty thankless task for a lot of people. So it's nice to see that we've had nearly the same number of compliments as we have complaints. So we are doing something right, aren't we? So I'll move the recommendation from the chair, seconded by Councillor Simpson. All those in favour? That is unanimous. Okay, item number 14 is the Rural Prosperity Fund. So we've had an indicative allocation of £1.9 million with regard to the UK Share Prosperity Fund, I've reported previously. And the bid to release the money has been submitted, and we are hoping to hear positively. We've been told October. And the government has now announced the top up of that funding for predominantly rural areas to reflect the extra barriers and challenges we face. So our indicative further allocation is just short of £500,000. So we need to submit an addendum to our investment plan submitted for the Share Prosperity Fund by the end of November. So given the timescales, as with the Shared Prosperity Fund, it's proposed to give delegated powers to the Chief Executive in consultation with myself and Councillor Gosling as leader of the opposition. Any comments or questions?
With the recommendation, Chief.
Thank you. Councillor Simpson.
Thanks, Chair. I'll have to second that with a suggestion that as part of working out how to spend this money, you send the government a report of the agenda item number 10, as we've got to find between 1.75 and 3.55 million in our budget. Maybe that 1.9 could be a good step in the right direction.
Thank you. So that has been
Second bit.
we'll look at that.
May not be entirely helpful.
So it has been moved and seconded.
It's more helpful than most of it.
All those in favour? And that is unanimous. Thank you. Item number 15 is the leisure facilities local authority trading company business case. So back in March of this year, the Community and Environment Board approved the establishment and registration of the wholly owned leisure facilities trading company, LATCO. However, we need to approve the business case that is compliant with HM Treasury Green Book. The business case is appended to the report, and the second report recommendation proposes that LATCO be established on the basis of it being a company limited by guarantee. And you'll recall that this was also an issue considered by the Community Environment Board in March. And in fact, these went, Community Environment Board looked at again only Monday.
It was a service specification.
And, yeah, absolutely. So lots of detail in these reports. Anybody got any questions? Councillor Chambers.
Yeah, I have got quite a few comments, and I was part of the discussion yesterday at the C&E board. And for my sins, I waded into the Green Book to see what a definition of a good business case should look like according to the Treasury, when it covers strategic case, economic case, commercial case, financial case, management case, and so on, the 5 pillars, if you like. And I tried to look at what we had in front of us and then set that in the context of the service specification that came, which is 71 pages, that came before the C&E board yesterday. And I have to say that, I mean, okay, we've agreed the principle of setting up this LATCO, that's done and dusted, that's a decision that's been taken. But if I was trying to take some sort of independent scrutiny of the justification that we're making, if you like, a business case to fit the decision that's already been made, I think there are a number of really quite serious flaws in what is in front of us today. And the first flaw for me is I don't get any understanding from the description of what we've got of how much we're actually expecting this service or this company to run at in terms of the services that they are going to take over. So I'll give you one contradiction in terms of the money is the leisure facilities are projected to attract 310,000 visits, net operating cost of 855,340 in 22-23, and at the same time we've got another statement which says the net cost of these services of council is 1.5 million, including 660,000 of central support costs and capital charges. And then clearly we come back to the original main driver of this, which is to save money on the business rates. The statements about VAT are no clearer now than they were back in March in terms of how much could be saved. And then what was really missing from me in terms of, you know, what was I was expecting about the arguments that were put forward about a more efficient entrepreneurial opportunity for this LATCO to grow and generate efficiencies and run it at less costs, was any assumptions about what that element of either service growth or service efficiency was going to be. It's still stuck very much around the idea that we're basically going to save £150,000. So for me, there's an issue about the robustness of the economic case. And the second thing, and this was part of the discussion last night, was that when you read the Green Book, it talks about, I'll just refer to that, it talks about the public sector needing whatever the business case is for changing an arrangement and an organisation. And the way it's set up is to be an intelligent customer and to be very aware of what is realistically achievable by the supply side. Now, this service specification, and I don't know whether it's going to be considered alongside of this business case, is absolutely fettering in terms of the bureaucracy that we are expecting of this LATCO arrangement or company. Although we talk in the option appraisal about it, giving it, let me just see, it talks about, reduction in the need to adhere to corporate processes, freedom to develop, innovate and focus on the leisure facility services. Improvements are likely, therefore, with increased autonomy and flexibility of service delivery. What we've got in this service specification is a requirement to produce 17 written reports, to have 3 meetings with the C&E board, 3 meetings with the Health and Wellbeing board, termly recorded meetings with Coleshill schools, that's 3 times a year, I assume, and the QE school, 37 new performance measures which weren't originally being reported on, 2 customer surveys by site every year. We're expected them to set up an agreement whereby, in a sense, it's always the authority that has the last say. So in relation to the Atherstone Memorial Hall, we're expecting them to agree and permit 6 closures for free charitable events, so that's income gone. We're expecting, if they want to put non-sporting activities on as part of their income generation, I assume, to have the last say and to be able to pull the plug on it if we don't agree with what they should be done. And it goes on in terms of this bureaucratic straitjacket that we are expecting, which actually, in terms of the business case, just doesn't stack up. I mean, why would you set something on the basis of a sort of belief that you're actually setting up something entrepreneurial and you justify your business case, but which isn't quantified in terms of the ability to grow and innovate, but at the same time put forward a document that is so bureaucratic and intensive and fettering that, frankly, I mean, I can't imagine anybody would want to take the leadership and responsibility for that. And on top of that, finally, and I will shut up then, we are expecting that in terms of the management of this comes down to the management capacity element of the 5 pillars. There would be a need to appoint a chief executive, head of operations, finance, marketing and administration staff. And on top of that, they'd have to build their own IT systems. They'd have to take over the running of the CCTV security. And there are all sorts of requirements about replacing this, that and the other should it go wrong. I mean, are we really serious that we expect, a service to take over what we have, which is a set of services that are running at about 71% of previous income and visitations, to be able to survive with that kind of straitjacketing imposed on them? I just think we're setting it up to fail. And I don't think anybody, having seen that service spec, would believe that our business case stacks up. And I would propose, therefore, that we have a members group to actually look in depth about that convergence and the way in which this business case, if somebody else is going to scrutinise it, could and should be improved along with the service specification.
Right, where should I start? First of all, for any good business to operate, it's only natural for it to consult with its customers and also its owners. So the customers will be, obviously the people that are using that service, so the service providers, and the owners will be us as the council. It's a wholly owned company and we own that company. Now, I am somewhat confused, Councillor Chambers, I have to say, because, 1 minute when we made this decision, I know that you were telling members of the public, etc., that, we are selling off our leisure services, which we clearly are not. And now you are saying that, you're now criticising, it seems, that, we as a council will have the final say. That's because we are the owners. So, of course, we are not selling off the leisure services. We are transferring into a wholly owned company, which therefore, of course, we will have the final say because we own the company. So I am very confused. You mention the bureaucracy, and then at the very last minute, there's too much bureaucracy, and at the very last minute of your rather long and confusing speech, suggest we increase the bureaucracy by saying we put another working group to look at these details. Quite frankly, I think there is a great lack of understanding by you over what we are trying to achieve. So it's very simple. We are setting up the company, or the company is being set up to run our leisure services more efficiently and effectively, but we will have the final say because we will own it. And that is the bottom line. Lots of agreements, with any company, there are huge amounts of paperwork that you have to do to comply with company law, etc., most of which one has to say are quite irrelevant, but you need to have it in place in case you are challenged. But we, in the business field, we know that as I say, that paperwork has to be in place. You need to have that. It's a bit like insurance. You need to have it, but you don't need to use it. Unless you were putting that forward as a recommendation, which you are. Okay. Well,
I'm putting forward, and Chair, if I just can come back, there's at no point did I tell the public that we were proposing to sell off our leisure services. What was on front of us were some management options, of which the in-house option and the rationale for moving it from in-house to some other arrangement, including a LATCO, had not been clearly justified. So at no point did we mislead the public at any point about that, and we have absolutely said what a LATCO should be. The second point, in terms of your comment, I'm not proposing to increase the bureaucracy itself. I'm just proposing that, in fact, we set up some kind of member group to actually try and reduce the bureaucracy, both in the service specification and strengthen the business case, because I don't see how, if anybody was to look at the business case that we have in front of us and the service specification, they could see how the two tie up. And whilst I accept that, there's operating standards, the procedures, health and safety, and all of that is all part of the paperwork. What we have got here, in terms of all those things I said, the 17 reports that have got to be written, the 18 meetings that people have got to go to 3 times a year, all of those things are things that we have added on to the requirements of this company, and expectations that frankly are bound, including the kind of economic uncertainty of what actually is the framework that they're going to work within, that unless somebody really pushes this a bit further, we're going to end up with a failure, and we'll be back again in another, having spent a lot of money on consultants and running it for a year with basically egg on our faces and a lot of money spent that didn't get us anywhere.
Okay, before I put the proposal to the vote, I do find it somewhat ironic because it was only back in March when we decided to we put the proposal to set the LATCO up. It was yourself and your group saying we need more detail, we need more detail. Yeah. Now you've got more detail, you're saying we need less detail. But anyway, we'll put your recommendation to the vote, and that is to set up a working group to scrutinise. Pardon?
It needs a second.
It does need a second.
Yeah, I'll second.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Mawson seconded. All those, sorry, did you want to speak? Councillor Simmons.
In relation to a members' working group, we've had a vote on this before in the last few months. One of the reasons we sort of voted against that at that time when that was proposed then was about bureaucracy, because the member, even a task and finish group, would then have to go to a board, which board, and all the requirements of the LATCO are going to the relevant boards at the moment. They've been to C&E, they'll go to resource, they'll come to executive, they'll go to full council. So adding in a task and finish or a separate members scrutiny panel or whatever it might want to be called this time, I think is the same as it was last time, in that the opportunities, and we had great conversation with great debate on Monday in relation to C&E, in relation to this service level agreement, and out of that's come a, will be a follow-up of a more operational manual. So I think actually putting that to the vote again, is that something we can vote on again if it's been proposed before and voted against?
It's within 6 months, so yes. Or rather, it isn't within 6 months, so therefore, yes.
Just out. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Chairman. To an extent, I'm going to take Councillor Chambers' comments in the context of a suggestion for improvement, which I think it was. And everything is capable of improvement. There is nothing that is ever perfect. And I think there are fair comments in terms of, have we done everything we could have done to avoid bureaucracy? That's a challenge. We should all take across every aspect of government service and local government service. And, I think we should all bear that in mind every time we approve any one of these things. So in the spirit of, if is this as good as it can possibly be, everything is open to challenge. And that's the nature of everything that I think you have to set that against the fact that we've been considering this for some time. And it has been through, I think, a significant debate at C&E board earlier this week. And not to be an old broken record, Chairman, but agenda item 10 showed you just how important it is that we get on with this. And I generally am not saying that I think this was what Councillor Chambers was saying was a method of debate. I don't think that's what he was trying to say. But to me, the big issue here is, given the budgetary issues that we have and the need to save between 1.75 and 3.5 million next year, the biggest decision we have to make is how quickly can we do this, and how soon can we start saving money, generating additional cash, and actually using this as one of the methods of supporting the financial provision for the services that this council provides. It might not be perfect, but because it's within the control of the council, we own it, we take some of the risk on it, we have the opportunity to improve as we go along. And I hope that the people who are directors of this company will take, their roles in that spirit. So yes, I'm sure everything can be improved. Nothing is perfect. But the thing that is not perfect is having to find maybe 3.5 million quid savings next year. And whatever we could do to assist with that, we should be doing as soon as we can.
Thank you, Councillor Simpson. So the recommendation has been moved and seconded. All those in favour of the new recommendation set of task and finish working group or working party, sorry. All those against? So they've lost. So I'll move the original recommendation from the chair. All those in favour?
Second, sorry, Chair.
Sorry, seconded by Councillor Humphries.
Thank you.
All those in favour? And against? And those carried. Thank you. Item number 16 is the exclusion of the public and press, to consider whether, in accordance with section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined by Schedule 12A to the Act. All those in favour?